Well, guys, I have kind of a good news, bad news situation for you. Good news for Townstar, maybe not so good news for Gala Games. What do I mean by that? Well, we are going to talk about that. It's actually a little multifaceted. We're going to go through the whole thing on today's Frugal BC. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the show. Today we are talking about Townstar and Gala Games and kind of a good news, bad news situation for each one. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, we're going to make it clear throughout the video, but it actually is a little bit multifaceted. For a couple of reasons, it works out to say that good news for Townstar, bad news for Gala Games. We're going to start out with the very, very basic, and that is that Townstar offline version is live. That's right. You can play Townstar without having to leave your browser on or your computer running 24/7. It updates in the background. This is made possible by the Godot version of Townstar. It is the new game engine that they switched to quite a while ago, way back in May. They actually had testing going on as early as, I think, February for a very small number of people. I was not in that beta test. Allegedly, they were adding people, supposedly they were adding people outside of that small group. And these are the people basically who are buying like all their NFTs, I should point out. And I'm not one of those. I bought an NFT and then Aaron turned off like not long after that. It definitely was not included in that group, but supposedly they were adding people. They didn't. So no one really got to try it until May, and then it was super duper buggy and had none of the features that we were hoping for Godot, including offline play. Now, I don't know about you, but I just really hate leaving my computer on like that. It's really frustrating for me to have to just be burning all that energy just to play what's an okay game. Like, I like it. It's not the greatest game in the world, and you're not earning, so like it seems like just a waste to leave your computer running like that. So very happy about that finally being live now. I tried it out for this latest competition. I went and started doing some town stuff, went back, nothing had updated. So I was a little frustrated, so I just said to heck with it and went about my business. I checked a day later, and all of a sudden it was now working, but now my town was completely out of money, but I still had all my gas, so I just kind of started building a little more. So you definitely want to be careful with this. You definitely want to, as Lycan Warlord points out in his video about it, you definitely want to have your gas production going before you start using the offline mode, because you can find yourself just completely out of gas and you basically have to start over at that point. But it's a little bit easier because you can, in all those boring parts where you just basically have to let your town run for a while, you could leave it in the background as long as you're good about coming back to it. Easy to forget, but good news, Townstar got this going because this was probably the most important feature of Godot. Other than earn, that is not back on. You still can't earn. And I have my doubts about earn anyway because of the way Gala's whole thing is structured with the Geary and the Gala chain. There's the treasure chest, and then there's the actual Geary, and then there's the Ethereum, and it's all, and then now there's multiple versions of Gala. It's all a big mess. I just find the whole thing really, really frustrating. But at least they got the offline play going, so good for them. That's the good news. That's the good news for Gala. Now, the bad news is what I'm talking about is I think Gala, in terms of their tokenomics, is going in the wrong direction. So we're going to look at a piece by Bitbender that he wrote about the tokenomics of play to earn games. Then we're going to look at a rebuttal to that. Okay, so this is Jason Brink, otherwise known as Bitbender. He's kind of in charge over at Gala. In fact, it probably has his title here. President of Blockchain for Gala, it says title. It says there seem to have been quite a few questions about why it would ever make sense to have a secondary token in a game. Let's dig into it. Thanks to Gala Games, Gala Go community, blah, blah, blah. First, one thing that has to be understood is that a game cannot control or influence the emission of a primary ecosystem token. Right. You wouldn't, for example, have a game built on ETH, make more ETH. The absolute most it would be able to do is redistribute ETH, in which case I think he meant to say, oh, I'm sorry, which came in via the game as a play and earn reward. Yeah, that's something that's happening right now with Fractal Monsters. They're basically redistributing Pepe rewards. So it's a finite thing. It kind of becomes, and Zone Games does this too. They basically become more like farming mechanisms. So actually you can do it, you just can't make more. But it doesn't mean you can't do it, but you can't make more of the original token. Gala is no different, obviously. A single game like Grit can't change the emissions of the Gala token. Now, there are ways redistribution of a token could potentially work, of course, which we just talked about, but it depends a lot on the fundamental economics of the game and people's willingness to spend in the game. However, in general, users spend X, get Y% of X. It's always a decreasing number. This is really important here now. Context here, typically in free-to-play gaming, 97% of players spend nothing. Of those 3% that do spend, 80% of the spend comes from the top 10% of the top 3%. He says, I feel like I need to do a certain Bernie Sanders voice when writing this. But yeah, what he's talking about basically is the whales. They actually call them whales. These are the handful of people that spend ridiculous amounts of money on some of these free-to-play games. They just get really addicted to them. They're made to be addictive. They're made to be like casinos, so it's almost like gambling, and they just get really, really excited about the gambling side of it. It's something about their psychology. These are people who probably would be addicted to gambling as well. They just happen to put that effort into a game instead. So he brings up, so an ecosystem like spider tanks with a secondary token, the usage of Gala is much higher, like 2 orders of magnitude higher. The secondary token, when coupled with honor, takes what people have thought of as a play-to-earn game and turns it into a play-to-own game, because you receive the token and turn it around and use it to improve or level up your tanks, which can bridge out and use however you like. Now, what he's not pointing out here, what the honor system is basically it's a penalty for taking the tokens that you earn and going around and selling them. In other words, they don't really have the value that they have because you can't actually turn them around and cash out. So it is essentially, it's like a forced play to own, which, by the way, as soon as the Townstar economy collapsed, and we're going to get to that in a second here, as soon as the Townstar economy collapsed, you heard Bitbender saying, whoa, we prefer to think of it as play to own, not play to earn, despite the fact that everybody was pushing, they had no problem with people pushing Townstar as a play to earn game when it was actually, you could play it and earn. And they set it up that way. But speaking of, Townstar is a really important point, because what did Townstar do? Townstar is not using a secondary token. Town collapsed. Town is like the perfect example of why secondary tokens actually don't work, because unless you do it like spider tanks, where you basically disincentivize people from using what they earn. But then it's like, well, why even have it? At some point, it's like, what's the point if you have to be forced to keep your stuff on the chain? Is that decentralized? Is that the idea that I can exit at any time? Not really. That's the whole point, right? Like, that's the whole point of what this is supposed to be about. This just goes to show that Web3 has just simply not lived up to its potential. Web3 games have definitely not lived up to their potential. Either the economy collapses, which is like Townstar, or they become pay to win, which is what it sounds kind of like what Spider Tanks is becoming. Townstar is becoming that now. Splinterlands is another great example of what's basically a pay to win. You got to pay, you basically have to pay your way into the game. Or they become, these pretty close to scams where you put all this money into a game before it's ever out, and then nothing ever, the actual realized game never comes out. And for a great example, there is no Gala game that is not in beta. They're all in beta right now. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe Spider Tanks is not considered beta anymore, but I don't think it is. I think pretty much every game is in beta, and Townstar has been in beta. I would almost argue it's reverted to alpha when they started the Godot version, because it was almost like a new game. I mean, the bugs were horrendous. One of the worst I've seen. Definitely not beta, definitely more alpha. So this is a real problem. This is kudos to On-Chain Gaming for pointing this out, and also for pointing me to this next person's video comments that we're going to look at here in a second. But the promise of play-to-earn games has been largely unfulfilled. What's actually happened, generally speaking, is that you end up paying a lot more than you would on a traditional game, and you get an inferior experience. You basically get a beta game at best, if a beta game even comes out. But let's look at this attorney here who's Gala's ex-lawyer. He has a rebuttal to what Bitbender is saying. Okay, this is Jesse Hines. He used to be an attorney for chief legal counsel, as a matter of fact, for Gala Games. Not anymore. So let's just take a look what he says. He says, here's my take on Web3 economies and tokens. He says game tokens in general, games that create tokens for the sole purpose of rewarding users have created tokens that are doomed to fail. And we saw that with Townstar. Rewarding users itself is not a sustainable model without someone constantly pulling the strings like the Fed. You have a token with no actual use case, only surviving so long as the creator goes to extraordinary means to keep the value of the token. That would be spider tanks. I would call those extraordinary means. Like basically you have to punish people to use the token and then it doesn't really have value, right? Like it loses its value because you can't actually cash it out for what it's supposed to be worth. Everyone who earns the token has the goal of making money and at least cashing some out. The addition of sinks and withdrawal limits, spider tanks, is only a temporary fix. A game company will only support a token for as long as it makes economic sense for themselves, which often isn't long enough for people to make their money back. Yeah, key point there, key point, and that is what happened exactly with Townstar, because there was no mechanism to keep it in the game. If you had to buy everything in town and not Gala, that might have actually worked, but that wasn't what they did. The alternative, there's zero reason that a similar game can't be successful with an already existing token with utility. The main reason why a centralized company wouldn't want to do that is greed. New tokens come with new money-making alternatives. The alternative to that is that the company actually do a revenue share with its customers from the money it takes in. If you don't oversell items and you distribute a portion of your revenue to users, what you could have is a very easy to implement and maintain economic model. Interesting. Then if the game is good enough, you'll have both people playing for the game to make money and being able to find success in both. So kind of the exact opposite of what Bitbender said. And I actually think that's true because you're going to be taking in money. This just allows you to distribute some of it out. You don't have to create new ETH to pay people ETH. Now, I would not do it in ETH. Okay, just to be clear. The fees alone would crush any efforts on either the user end or the player end. But something like Algorand or HBAR, you could very easily see someone doing this and actually distributing out a percentage of what they're what they're taking in. The revenue share model could actually work, and then it's a matter of how, is it the top players that get the most? Is it kind of just everybody who plays? If you play a certain amount per day, a number of ways to do that. But that could actually be a sustainable model, because if it's only based on what you're taking in, well, if you're taking in less, you're going to be getting less. And actually, the funny thing is, I'm pretty sure from all the AMAs I've watched with Townstar that that's pretty much exactly what they're doing, because distributions are going to be based, and earned rewards are going to be based on how much Gala makes that day. So they're doing with Townstar the very thing that they're saying doesn't work. It's crazy, right? That's the state we're in with play to earn games now. And I say this like I came into the play to earn space and the crypto gaming space thinking this is the best use case for NFTs as games. It just makes a lot of sense. But unfortunately, the way it actually works out is companies use this to rake in profits before they've even produced a game. So there are incentives to make a really, really good game that you just can't put down. It's just not there. I wish it was the opposite. I would love play to earn games to work. And I think under the model he's talking about, I think they actually could work. But it means the company's going to have to give up some profits instead of creating this new value out of thin air that ends up being thin air in the end. Well, that's enough out about me, but kudos to Gala, kudos to Townstar. I do want to give them credit for getting the offline play working. I hope Earn is around the corner, because it'd be nice to have that working. I did earn some Gala playing the competitions. It was nice to have it where you just had to like achieve a certain thing and then you would get the rewards. So that's pretty cool. I'm not sure exactly what I would do with it, because now there's this whole thing where you have to convert to ETH to get rid of it. And it's, like I said, it's kind of a mess, but at least they got that part working. And I do think Townstar is probably one of their more fun games and accessible games to play. So I'm not knocking it completely. It would be more fun to play if they actually put in some of the stuff that like in Warlord has talked about, where how about like a free to play, how about a no NFT competition? It would be good. It'd be fun. Or one NFT competition or something like that, or limit 1 to 5, up to 5, only up to 5 NFTs for this thing, and have some tiers and also like tiers for people who are new to the space. Instead, you're just throwing in and good luck. It's just bad competition tactics for gaming. It's just bad strategy. But anyway, I've ranted enough. Thanks for watching, guys. Remember, not your keys, not your crypto. Get your stuff off exchanges as much as possible. Ledger for the maximum amount of safety. I have links down below for Ledger as well as some other crypto deals. And as always, I'm Frugal BC. I hope you're staying safe out there, and I will see you in the future.